Hello and welcome. Our guest for this edition of ASTA is our new police chief, Patrick Gallagher. Chief Gallagher, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, share with us a little bit about yourself and your law enforcement background, please.
Well, I am originally from New York City, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, the youngest of 5 boys in Brooklyn, New York. Have a family history of law enforcement. My father was in law enforcement, my uncle, my brother. Came into New York City Police Academy at the age of 20. Graduated at the top of my class. Was fortunate or terrified enough that as a 20-year-old man to deliver the valedictory address in Madison Square Garden in front of 16,000 people. So once I did that, I figured I could do anything.
Right.
So I did that, and then was on patrol in many different places within New York City. I did 23 years with the New York City Police Department. I was on patrol in Times Square. That was my first assignment. Back when Times Square was not the Times Square it is today. It was more of a rough and tumble, crime-ridden place. I was there for a while. I was in a precinct in Brooklyn, the 88th precinct. It's Fort Greene is the area of Brooklyn. Was in the police academy for a while. I did some teaching there. Got promoted up the ranks from sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and then final promotion was deputy inspector. And during that time, at several other precincts, Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, Manhattan. Then I found myself in the Internal Affairs Bureau. And that's where I finished up my career investigating police corruption in the NYPD. Finished up there in 2007. Got a job working for Marist College, doing some teaching for a while, which is a very nice break from law enforcement. I was teaching totally unrelated to law enforcement topics. It was great. After a while, my, at the time, fiance suggested, and I agreed, it was time to move out of New York, do something different. Job opened up in Truth or Consequences, and I took the job as police chief in Truth or Consequences, and that was a little bit of a culture shock, going from New York City to Truth or Consequences, I'll tell you that, but a very valuable and rewarding experience there. Was chief of police there for a little over 2 years, great community. Unfortunately, my father passed away shortly around that time, so I left, went back to New York, took care of some things. Came back to New Mexico. My wife got a job up in Santa Fe, and I figured I'd go up there. I am retired. I figured I'd go up to Santa Fe and spend some time up there and relax and explore Santa Fe. Went up there, saw a job opening there for a police captain in their Internal Affairs Division to do investigations. I did that for a couple of years in Santa Fe. Then I transitioned into out of law enforcement again, doing some training for the city. There was a quick change in the city's police chief. The city manager at the time asked me to step in interim. I did. I took over the police department up there and kind of got my law enforcement juices flowing again. And then I submitted for the permanent job, which I did get. And I did that until the end of last year, just a couple of weeks ago. And I resigned and took this position here in Las Cruces, and I'm very excited to be here.
Well, and we welcome you, and very impressive professional background. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to your days in New York, and you played a very prominent role in the 9/11 attacks or post 9/11 attack. Tell us a little bit about what you did then.
Sure. Yeah, it was obviously a terrible day, being in New York, born and raised in New York City.
Certainly.
Essentially born and raised 5 miles from the World Trade Center. World Trade Center was in my backyard, so just one of those you never thought it would happen, and especially in your own hometown. At the time, I was working in internal affairs in Brooklyn. I was a police captain, and we were just a regular day. I hadn't gotten to work yet because I kind of worked midday shifts to cover both of two of my shifts. My wife at the time, my ex-wife now, at the time called me, told me to put it on television. I put it on television, saw what was going on, and it looked like a plane crashed, had crashed into the World Trade Center. Got in my car, went to work, and as I got to work, the second plane hit. And obviously, us, just as everybody else, realized this was no accident, and it was an intended attack. We waited orders. We got deployed into Manhattan. As we were deploying into Manhattan, we had a horrific sight of watching the towers fall right in front of us, and went through, I don't know if you know the tunnels and bridges in New York.
Right.
We went through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, which was at the lower end of Brooklyn. It goes into Manhattan. So never saw that tunnel without traffic until that day. Nobody was heading in except us. We were heading in, and there were people, I don't know who they, I think they must have worked at the tunnel. They were handing out surgical masks at the time and saying, put these on, we don't know what's in the air. There's a lot of dust in the tunnel. So we went in the tunnel. It's a tunnel I used to use every day, and we went into the tunnel. About a third of the way into the tunnel, it was black. Couldn't see. Lights were on. we had to put our police lights on to see because it was just so full of dust and debris. And then got out into Lower Manhattan, and it was, just horrific. It was something I try not to think too much about. Just the air was choked with smoke, and the thing I remember the most was just papers falling from the sky, from people's desks, just still coming down. People,
and that's an image a lot of us recall.
Yeah, it was just amazing. And so we deployed to a mobilization point, got our orders. We didn't know what to expect. Our orders at that time, what we did, since we were an investigative group, we were assigned to go to a hospital and help with the identification of all the people who would be coming in injured and unconscious, and nobody knew who they are. And that's, as investigators, we could have done that, helped with their identification, fingerprints, whatever else. We're at the Harlem Hospital, secured the area. I had a team of probably 30, 40 detectives with me, and we waited for 10 hours, and nobody came because nobody made it out. So. And then went home, and then we started working 12-hour shifts the rest of the days after that. And then on off times, we, a lot of us would volunteer and go onto the pile and dig through it best we could. And that was the worst part, just seeing the aftermath of it.
What a horrific experience,
Really
and
was.
certainly not an experience we as a country ever want to forget.
No.
And so I thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on that and your experiences. So bringing you back to Las Cruces, what are some of your priorities for our community and for the residents of Las Cruces?
Well, the first thing I want to make clear to everybody, the residents, the police officers, the city, and I've told this to the city manager, the mayor, is I don't intend to make any changes immediately. I think it's important to immerse myself into the department, into the city, find out what's wrong with the department, more importantly, what's right with the department. If it ain't broke, I'm not going to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a firm believer in that. So it's going to take a little while to do what I call a listening tour. Go around talking to elected officials, to the rank and file police officers, to just everyday citizens, and find out what their concerns are. If there was a mission, if I would say what are my priorities, 3 basically would be the mission of any police department I've worked with, is to, number 1, reduce crime and the fear of crime. You're never going to eliminate it. I didn't say stop crime. I said reduce it. So we can have an impact and do that.
Okay.
Second thing is to work with the community to identify problems and solve them together, jointly. All right? There's a police department can't be an occupying force, an occupying army determining what problems exist and how to solve them. We need to do that with community input. And the third one is also very important. The third priority is to effectively and efficiently manage the public resources that we've been entrusted with. A large part of the city budget is devoted to public safety and the police department specifically. So I intend to make sure that money is wisely spent to address the first 2 priorities I just mentioned.
Okay. Well, Chief, that sounds really good. And again, you bring a wealth of experience to Las Cruces, and we look forward to working with you, and we welcome you to our community, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Chief Patrick Gallagher, Las Cruces Police Department's new chief, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure.